Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about the red alert. What does that mean? Let's take a look at the movie, A Darker Shade of Green, Red Alert.
I think one of the things that we have accomplished internationally is a Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that requires states to ask before they take. And that has to be the new relationship between indigenous peoples and the state. Because until they have to ask, it's the same old colonialism that Columbus brought over and whenever.
But we're already seeing the land grabs. There are many, many situations of indigenous lands that there is no clear title. And so those lands are being rapidly gobbled up already, and red threatens to speed up that process even more.
While red is being negotiated at the United Nations climate forums, state governments around the world have begun forging their own red agreements. In late 2010, the governor of California signed an agreement with the governors of Acre, Brazil, and Chiapas, Mexico, to combat climate change and protect tropical forests. How? By linking industries in California with forest protection schemes in Acre and Chiapas through carbon trading.
Instead of requiring our California companies to do all their reductions in California, it may be more cost-effective for them to buy offsets. And that's where the developing countries come in. That's another way for California and other large economies to help the developing world by making those investments through the market.
Chiapas, on the border with Guatemala, is the Mexican state with the highest number and greatest diversity of indigenous peoples in Mexico. Chiapas also has the deepest poverty and the most forest cover. The government of Chiapas has a long history of conflict with indigenous communities. Now the governor plans to put the entire surface of the state into the carbon market. The Lacandon jungle is one of the largest remaining areas of rainforest north of the Amazon, but only about 10% of the Lacandon jungle remains intact. Over the course of many years, numerous communities have settled in areas of the Lacandon that are now designated as natural protected areas, such as the Montes Azules Biosphere Reserve. Now, these communities are under threat as the government seeks to displace these so-called illegal settlers in order to accommodate red.
Nuestros abuelos han sufrido de varios años, desde ellos que no quisieron, estaban en una finca, pero ya no aguantaron la explotación, la esclavitud que estaban viviendo allí. Entonces tuvieron que decidir para buscar un lugar. Entonces de que llegaron en esta comunidad. Tuvieron que enfrentar muchas enfermedades, mucha injusticia del gobierno. Y hasta ahorita lo estamos viviendo. El gobierno no nos han apoyado tan siquiera. Nos han tratado de que no somos como seres humanos o de que no somos parte de México. El gobierno no nos da lo que en realidad lo necesita la gente, sino que nada más nos da proyectos que no dan vida, no que dan muerte. Son proyectos que nos dan a cultivar cuestiones de palma aceite, de todo eso, de otros, de reforestar y de sembrar otros árboles que no son conocidos de nosotros. Y eso no lo servimos, no lo necesitamos.
Welcome back to Green Time. We just saw some episodes from A Darker Shade of Green, Red Alert, and that's put forward by the forestry activist group Global Justice Ecology Project, who has done a lot of work in this area. I'm host Don Fitz with Green Time, and with me I have Jim Sheff And Jim, you are with Kentucky Heartwood.
Yes.
And you used to be in Missouri, and you used to tell us a lot about, well, you used to work with forestry groups here.
Yes.
Okay, now tell me, we were just looking at a segment about the red alert, about a darker shade of green. And one of the things they talked, they're talking about forestry and native peoples losing their lands. Is there a difference between a forest and a tree plantation? A lot of things, the way that people will say what they're going to do is they might take an area and put even more trees in it by growing a lot of healthy trees like eucalyptus or pine. Is that the same thing as a forest?
Not at all. A forest is a really complex system, and it's dominated by trees. That's part of what defines a forest and characterizes a forest. But a forest includes often many species of trees. It includes various types of shrubs and herbaceous plants and fungi and animals and soil microorganisms and all sorts of things. When you look at a plantation or a tree farm, you're often looking at what's called a monoculture, just one tree species in rows. They're often treated with herbicide, sometimes fertilizer to try to control it, like a crop.
So you have to spray a lot of pesticides or herbicides on the tree plantation to make it.
That's frequently done.
Now, do you have to spray pesticides on a forest to make it healthy?
No.
Okay, so basically we're talking about a huge loss in biodiversity because we're focusing on just one species.
Certainly, it's not that much different than growing a corn crop.
Okay, now tell me this. You use the phrase reduction framing of complex ecosystems. Could you tell me what you mean by that phrase? You explained that to me before the show.
Well, what I'm talking about is that we're taking, as I said, a forest is a very complex system. There's innumerable relationships between all the pieces, all the different species and organisms, and it's very complex.
And we don't even fully understand all the complexity because you might have such a huge number of species in the soil and above the soil.
Oh, certainly. And so when we talk about forests in terms of just carbon or board feet, which is the measure of timber, we're reducing that complexity to something that we can eat to one or two facets and something that's usually translatable to $1. And when we do that, we lose sight of all the richness, all the complexity, and a whole lot of other services and values that we just haven't brought into that one narrow little thing that we've chosen to look at.
Oh, so and you talk about the value of the forest. Of course, the forest is valuable in and of itself.
Yes,
okay,
the intrinsic value of the forest.
And of course, that's lost whenever you do something like set up a tree plantation or cut down a huge amount of it so that you can grow row after row of pine tree.
Right, so there's the intrinsic value, which is the idea that the forest has value in and of itself and deserves to exist. But then there's also a whole bunch of other values that might have some value that you could ascribe a dollar amount to. For example, water, cleaning water, cleaning air, a whole bunch of other functions that a forest does that are lost.
Okay, well, one of the trees that might be planted in a forest plantation is eucalyptus. Do you know why they grow eucalyptus trees?
I'm not a real expert in eucalyptus growing, Eucalyptus silviculture. It's a very fast-growing tree.
Okay.
I do believe it's used for pulp for various sorts of things.
Okay, if you want to make paper, you can, or other wood industries that you want pulp, you might use the eucalyptus.
Yeah, it's one of a number of fast-growing tree species that can be used for very very quick turnover on a piece of land.
Now, if you're going to have a fast turnover tree, what is that going to do to the water that the tree needs?
Well, eucalyptus is known for being a real water hog. It needs a lot of water to persist, and so it takes that water out of the soil and transpires it up into the atmosphere, and then it's no longer available in the soil for other plants to use.
So eucalyptus could actually dry out the soil, or it could force the plantation owner growing it to pump in a lot of water.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so they have to pump in water, so that could actually affect the streams and the rivers that are near the eucalyptus plantation.
Right, so if you have a native forest that doesn't need irrigation because those species and those relationships have evolved to that place and that climate, when you plant a species that needs a lot of extra water, it's got to come from somewhere.
Right, okay. So one of the solutions which is being proposed is REDD. Now tell me what REDD stands for, and then tell me if that's a good solution to forest issues.
Well, RED stands for Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation, and it's an agreement that it still isn't finalized. It's being done under the United Nations and as part of some of the climate talks. And on the surface, it seems like a good idea. The overall concept is that forests they sequester carbon from the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas.
So sequestering means that
they take it out of the atmosphere, they absorb it into their bodies. The forest is made up of that carbon that was in the atmosphere. It's like a sponge soaking it up. And a lot of industries and countries put out a lot of carbon pollution that's causing global warming and climate change. And so the idea is to say that these forests have a financial, monetary value in sequestering that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And so it's attempting to create mechanisms so that carbon polluters, primarily in the northern hemisphere, can pay countries with a lot of forest land or companies with a lot of forest land, particularly in the tropics and sometimes the southern hemisphere, in order to keep their forests standing instead of logging them. And that's how it's sold, and that's the overall idea.
Okay,
that may not be how it works.
Okay, well let me tell you. Let me repeat and see if I have the idea right. In other words, I own a big factory in the United States, and it spews a lot of toxins into the air, and then it causes a lot of greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
And so I need to reduce my amount of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So what I can do is I can buy carbon credits from this country in South America, maybe Chiapas, Mexico, and I can say, okay, I'll pay you not to cut your forest. And since I pay you not to cut your forest, I'm offsetting, I'm purchasing offsets, and so I can continue to pollute.
Exactly, and the idea is also to make it cheaper for the polluter to buy those forest carbon offsets than it is for them to actually reduce their carbon pollution.
And so basically it keeps the pollution going in the United States.
Yes. Very simply, yes.
And so I say, when I say you don't cut your forest, I'm not even sure that the forest would be cut to begin with, am I?
You're not. And so, first of all, you're not sure that that forest wasn't going to be cut to begin with, as you said. The other thing is that even if you come up with an agreement that that forest isn't cut, that doesn't mean it's not going to be displaced somewhere else. It's a concept called leakage. So if you don't cut this forest, if there's a need for that timber might be coming from another piece of forest somewhere else. It may not actually cause any overall reduction.
Okay, so if I have this straight, you might reduce the cutting in the place that you pay not to cut. But if a company wants a lot of timber because it's profitable to sell timber, that company's probably going to find someplace to cut timber someplace.
Right, and the agreements under RED and some similar agreements as they're currently envisioned, they're supposed to minimize or make sure that that leakage isn't happening, but practically that's really difficult to do.
Okay, let's hold that thought and let's take a look at another segment of A Darker Shade of Green, Red Alert. And we'll be, after we see that clip from the movie, we'll be back to finish up our discussion.
Chiapas is positioning itself as a global leader in the production of agrofuels. Like in many places, agrofuel plantations and other forest monocultures are promoted hand in glove with RED.
Como hay que reforestar, pues de pasada hacemos negocio con esa reforestación. Entonces vamos a plantear que las plantaciones de monocultivo forestales es igual a selva o a bosque. Entonces dicen, bueno, yo puedo tomar la selva del Amazonas, la selva de lo que sea, y sembrar puro pino. Y absorbe lo mismo de CO2. Entonces al mismo tiempo absorbe y vendo la capacidad del pino de absorber la tonelada, y al mismo tiempo vendo madera. O siembro eucalipto y al mismo tiempo vendo para papel, que tanto se desperdicia en el norte. O siembro palma africana y al mismo tiempo vendo la respiración de la palma africana y al mismo tiempo vendo palma de aceite.
Él lo ve como un negocio, nuestra madre tierra, pues nosotros eso no se debe de decir, pues es nuestra madre, no se puede vender. Y es más, está viendo sobre cómo está metiendo el proyecto del RED, o Ajá, que viene siendo como el capturo del carbono, pues eso es negocio de ellos, nosotros no nos conviene, nosotros lo usamos para autoconsumo.
According to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, any project that affects indigenous peoples can only go ahead under conditions of free, prior, and informed consent. Yet the displacements of indigenous communities occurring right now in the region of Amador Hernández, with the goal of fencing off the Lacandon jungle for carbon sequestration, are in clear violation of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
Lo que dice el gobierno es que nosotros somos destructores, pero eso no es cierto. Tenemos varias áreas que tenemos reservados que ahí nadie puede entrar y nadie puede tocar.
Nos han culpado siempre de destructor, nos han buscado la forma de cómo mal hablar de nosotros. Que ahorita ya no solo el gobierno lo está pensando, lo que es gobierno mexicano, sino son planes internacionales. Y por eso nuestros abuelos han luchado varios años y siempre han resistido y han vivido acá. Como siempre lo decíamos, nuestros abuelos lo decían siempre que no hay otra cosa que nuestra casa es la tierra. Y sin la casa también no podemos vivir.
Welcome back to Green Time. We just saw another segment of A Darker Shade of Green, Red Alert, which is put together by the Global Justice Ecology Project. I'm host Don Fitz, and with me I have Jim Sheff with Kentucky Heartwood. Jim, we were just talking about the whole concept of red and what that does to logging in the area. And what we were leaving our discussion on is if a company in the United States pays, it purchases carbon credits so they can keep polluting and keep putting greenhouse gases into the air in the United States, that supposedly that stops cutting of wood in another area, such as Chiapas, Mexico.
Right.
And you were saying that might not always be, it might not work like that.
Right. Well, as I mentioned earlier, you have the issue of leakage, which is that if there could just be displaced, so another area could be logged.
You might have the company might know beforehand that it can get board feet from Brazil, or it can do forestry in Africa, or it can buy wood from Asia.
Exactly.
And so it might have less wood from Chiapas, but the overall destruction of forests globally might not have changed at all.
Right. And then a whole other issue is that often in a lot of the countries that are being looked at for these forests to grow, or for these credits, is that law enforcement against illegal logging is very poor. And so it's not a stretch at all to imagine a situation where a forest was to be conserved, was paid to be conserved, but timber companies went in, logged large sections of it anyway, and there'd be no repercussions or enforcement for that.
Well, of course, when we think about the North American Free Trade Agreement that went into effect in 1994, I can remember that labor groups and environmental groups complained vigorously against it, saying that the reason that companies are going to relocate, it's making it easier for companies to relocate, is because they know that labor regulations are not enforced as well in Mexico. Environmental regulations are not enforced as well in Mexico. And in other countries in Latin America and Central America, do you think they could even be more lax than they are in Mexico?
Oh yeah, and illegal logging is really epidemic across the world. It's really pretty awful because not only are the forests being cut, but a lot of times the country may own it and it's just being stolen, or there's indigenous peoples that live there and they're having their resources taken away. It's a huge problem, and if that isn't dealt with, you don't have proper enforcement and monitoring. RED, there's no way it could even meet any of its goals.
Okay, and so if the global system is wanting to have more wood, and you haven't dealt with the global system wanting more wood, then taking a little bit of, saying you're going to have a little bit of wood here, less wood here, doesn't help very much.
No, it really does not.
It's sort of like if you have a leak in your bathtub, and you want to fill up your bathtub with water, and so you plug up one hole, but it has two holes someplace else. The water still. I guess that's why they call it leakage.
Yeah, definitely. You know, right now globally we're dealing with multiple environmental crises, and so a lot of this is put under the framework of the climate crisis, of climate change and global warming. But we're also having a forest crisis. You know, deforestation worldwide is an enormous problem. We're losing forests at an alarming rate all over the world to meet unsustainable demands. And so we need to be looking at ways of both reducing carbon pollution and reducing deforestation at the same time. And what we're doing here is really neither, though it appears to be doing both.
Okay, in other words, what the REDD agreement tells people that it's doing is it says it's dealing with pollution in the north, and it's reducing forestry in the usually the southern half of the hemisphere. But I have it correct that the whole concept of REDD is to allow people to keep polluting in the north. So it can't possibly be reducing greenhouse gas emissions if it says if you pay money in order to continue to have greenhouse gas emissions.
Right. You know, the terminology here, it's an offset. And that's the idea. You're trying to offset it. So the assumption here is that the forest is inevitably going to be logged. And if that forest is logged, then that's a release of carbon into the atmosphere. So you're offsetting your pollution here by reducing the pollution coming that would otherwise come from logging some forest. So again, on the surface, it sounds great. But in reality, it doesn't work, and it's just a distraction from real solutions.
And of course, one of the things which is lost, of course, we're losing genetic diversity, but a factor which is usually not talked about, but the movie I think talks about very well, is the loss of cultural diversity. Because the last great areas of forest in the world, they're overwhelmingly where people live, and these are overwhelmingly Aboriginal people.
Right.
And so what happens when the forest is logged?
Well, when the forest is logged, you know, it can no longer support the people or their culture. A lot of traditional indigenous cultures are rooted in the environment in which they developed and persist. And so there are very intimate relationships between the people and their culture and that forest. And so both the people's ability to subsist in the forest and the fabric of their culture fall apart.
I know some people have taken pictures of where people are forced to live after they move out of the forest in Chiapas, and they're in these little, they actually look like little boxes on a hillside where you have one box after another, and there's no trees around, and there's one house right after another, and then it has absolutely nothing to do with Aboriginal culture, does it?
No, not at all. I mean, some of the people might be able to survive for a while, but the culture ends up destroyed just like the forest does.
And so we certainly know that living in the United States, how the overwhelming majority of Native American culture has been destroyed in the United States, and people are left with all sorts of ways to survive, like gambling casinos, but very few original, cultural norms of Native Americans, and then we see this happening at an ever-increasing rate in Central America, in Mexico, in South America. Okay, Jim, we only have about a minute left. What do you think the most important ideas are that you would like to leave the viewer with? Well,
as I said a moment ago, we're dealing with multiple environmental crises here, and we don't have time for false solutions and distractions that just allow industries to continue business as usual. We really need to focus on reducing carbon pollution, reducing deforestation, and we really need to come up with some real solutions that really question some major assumptions about our culture and about how we consume things.
Okay, it sounds to me like a lot of those solutions are going to mean using a lot less timber.
Certainly.
Okay, Jim, I want to thank you very much for tuning in, for coming to this episode of Green Time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks, Don.
I want to thank the viewer for tuning into this episode of Green Time, and I hope that you take a look at your TV set at the same time next week to see the next episode.